Evening, Council. I'd like to call the meeting to order for January 22nd, 2024, second general meeting for the new year. And Councillor Van Hangenbos is off due to some pain from a recent minor surgery, so wish him well. Everyone else is here, so call the meeting to order. We have a moment of reflection first before we get into the regular meeting approval of the agendas. So we'll start with a moment of reflection now. All right, thank you very much. First order of business is the approval of the consent agenda. Anyone wishing to pull an item from the consent agenda? Otherwise, a motion to approve as presented. Councillor Fox makes the motion to approve. Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Regular meeting agenda. I've heard of no additions, changes, so motion to approve the agenda as presented. Councillor Monteith makes that motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving right along, since there's no delegations or public hearings, to new business. Item 1, purchasing policy revision, and we'll ask our CEO, Anthony Burdett, to introduce this to us.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Did I black out that we skipped for the good of council? I thought maybe I had a long blink, but...
Really quick one. No, sorry, we'll go back. Point of order. For the good of council, does anyone wish to share anything with the whole council? No one has anything to share? I would mention that thank you to the town staff in clearing snow. I know it's not all cleared and it's not all moved, but Main Street looks really good. That was a little messy for a little bit, so it was looking good. Any other comments? Lisa?
Sure, I can just remind council and folks from town that the chamber has announced the opening for the business awards. So those nominations can happen now. I believe if you go to the chamber website as well as their Facebook page, there's a link to a document where you can nominate worthy businesses and employees. And the gala, I believe, is happening February 22nd this year. So, but the nominations are now open.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, CEO Burdett.
Yeah, I'd just like to publicly welcome Wally Ola to our staff. He's been here with us for a week now, and it's been fantastic. He's learning in great strides, but so we're really happy to have him, and we're really excited about the future of the town with him in this position.
Very good.
Thanks for having me.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments? Highlights? Any committee highlights? Personal highlights? I know we did have an MOU coming up with what did we call the neighborly agreement with the Blood Tribe and Pekani, and that has been postponed, so we look forward to being able to do that in the not too distant future. So we look forward to seeing a new date on that one. Councillor Henniger?
Just because I'm helping out, but I do not curl by any means. There are 2 bonspiels coming up. The Farmers and Friends bonspiel and Don McLean Memorial combo spiel, and that's February, March. So just wanted to put that in for that local group.
Very good. If there's no other comments, we will carry on with new business now. And starting with the purchasing policy, and our CEO Burdett will introduce this to us.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Council and Administration had the opportunity to review the purchasing policy last week in our committee of the whole meeting. So just wanted to highlight a few of those changes. kind of review what it is that we're requesting to change in the purchasing policy. Obviously, this policy, because it does have significant financial implications, because we follow it regularly, and it pertains to the use of how we spend the budget. This is why it's a policy that needs to be approved by council. But some of the things that have been changed in this policy there's a few pieces of language to update our ability to have credit cards. Previously just the CAO and the Director of Finance, and we've added the Director of Community and Protective Services to that list as well, as we use those for various town administrative duties, and the convenience of a credit card really helps out administration when needed. The rest of the policy remains the same until you get into some of the limits. Administration found it needful to increase some of the limits, as those limits had been the same for many years. Just found that some of them were restrictive. Obviously, we still have our same internal controls and oversights and approvals. It's just the requirement to go to an RFP as opposed to getting a few quotes has changed. For example, for purchases of goods and services it used to be 5,000 or less, you wouldn't have to get a competitive quote, but where more than one supplier has been considered, the employee making the purchase must record the reason for the selection. And as you continue on, for purchases of goods and services between what used to be 10,000 and, oh my eyeballs, 5,000 and 9,999, up to 24,999. We changed to 10,000, 24,999, and 74,999. Now most of these amounts we found to be appropriate given other communities and how much they're spending, and our Director of Finance has referenced the Northwestern, or I don't even remember what the NWTPA stands for, but it's a trade amount. Yeah, the trade agreement that we need to make sure that at a certain amount we must go to tender, and we must allow for those opportunities to be out there in the public, and so we are still following the requirements on that front. The only other change other than those amounts being changed was the authorizing the Director of Operations, increasing the spending limit. And now this spending limit, don't want people to think that it's just a free-for-all and now that they can spend willy-nilly, but it's giving them the ability to authorize payment, and then that authorization of payment is still approved and finalized by a council member and the CAO. For example, for a large capital project, if we have large amounts that are coming through, the initial approval could be done by the Director of Operations, after which they would be reviewed by a council member and the CAO. And we found that the requirements, or I guess the direction that's given to us by the budgets and the other internal controls, we thought this was appropriate to remove that limit and put the Director of Operations in the same category as the Director of Finance and the CAO when it comes to capital and operating budgets. So I think that's about all the changes that were that occurred in the policy.
Very good, thank you. Anyone prepared to make a motion to accept the purchasing policies information? Councillor Wolstenholme. Any questions for administration on the policy change? Debate, seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving along to 2024 grants to organizations, and we'll ask our Director of Community and Protective Services, Lacey Gillingham, to introduce.
Thank you and good evening. This is for the 2024 grants to organizations, and I'll just remind council of the purpose of this funding. The objective of the annual grant is to support community development by providing nonprofit organizations in the town of Fort Macleod with access to municipal funding, resources, and support, community available recreation programs, arts and culture events, and programming, as well as senior, family, and community experiences being prioritized as funds are limited with this program. All applications were reviewed with council at the council retreat early January, and the following amounts are what we are asking council to approve tonight. Fort Macleod Chamber of Commerce, $3,000. Fort Macleod Allied Arts Council Association, $13,500. The Fort Macleod Handy Bus, $15,000 for operational costs and $5,000 towards the vehicle replacement fund. Fort Macleod Triathlon, $2,000. The Santa Claus Parade Committee, $10,000. Clares Home Animal Shelter, $3,000. Third Wave Fitness, $2,500, and the Fort Macleod Community Inclusion and Diversity Committee, $2,000. And this is for a total of $56,000 for the 2024 grants organizations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone prepared to make a motion as per the recommendation? Councillor Wilson-Knowles, thank you. Has made motion as per the recommendation. Any questions, comments on the recommendation or the motion, sorry? Councillor Wilson.
Clares Home Animal Shelter, can we take some of our dogs from our kennels up there?
When we are able to and when they have space, they will accept our dogs, yes. But they are also experiencing over full shelter right now. And so they have taken a couple over the last, I would say 6 months, but they, like I said, they are full as well. But when they do, and they also will take cats from here too. So if people have injured cats or they find a cat that they they'll accept the cats as well. Again, when they have room, but they are also at that capacity level right now. So they do try to assist as much as they can. And in this last year especially, they did take a few cats for us and some dogs.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions on the grants organization? Councillor Henniger?
I think just more of a clarification piece for the Third Wave Fitness, because people will see that and have maybe put in different grants, but that is speaking towards I'm going to say the word, defibrillator equipment in a public space that a lot of people in our town use, correct?
Correct. That's all that it's for, is for that safety and health piece of their gym, not extra equipment or fitness equipment.
All right, any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Bylaw 1979, an animal control bylaw, and again, we'll ask our director, Gillingham, to speak to this one.
So this has been a fun bylaw to draft. There's been lots of research that have happened. We are calling this bylaw 1979, the animal control bylaw. Basically, the land use bylaw triggered the necessity for the animal control bylaw with the revision that's coming from it. It had been suggested that mention of the animal units, that type of thing is put in its own separate bylaw. So as we've removed that from the land use bylaw, we've pretty much verbatim taken that directly from the land use bylaw and put it in the animal control bylaw. While doing that, we've also noticed that there's been an increase in a desire to perhaps house some chickens on residential property as well as some bees. So we have done some research and included for the first reading anyways for council the chicken and bee guidelines that if we were to pass this bylaw as is, that we would like to recommend for council. There's a lot of communities that do house and allow residents in regular residential lots chickens. The number varies slightly between communities, anywhere from 3 to 6 has kind of been the average. So we've kind of stuck with that number of 5 for a regular residential lot. And then bees is a little bit different for bees depending on where you are and what you're looking at. But from what we can see, we've done the average of 2 hives as well, and there's a certain size of hives that kind of accommodates. There are also with each of those inclusions some application requirements that they do need to apply for with that, and then especially with the bees one, there is also the neighborly poll that they need to go and talk to their surrounding neighbors and express their desire to host that and have letters of recommendation or approval from their neighbors to be able to do that. This is a new idea for the town, so we're very much aware. We will be hosting with council a town hall into February, March-ish. I would probably guess it's more going to be early March, but that this will be one of the topics of discussion there, that we will open the floor to the public for questions and concerns to be stated so that council can have a full view of residents' concerns, whether they support or don't support it, and then we can adjust prior to the public hearing and second and third reading, even if necessary, to make sure that we're following what the residents would like to see and again, what we think is in the best interest of the community as a whole. There's a lot of new stuff in here because of the bees and the chickens, so I won't bore council with the details. We've had this out for you guys for a little bit, and it'll be, I'm sure, a topic of discussion for quite a few people over the next few weeks before we get to the public town hall. But this is a great place to start, and I'm happy that we're considering this, so I put it forward to you for first reading tonight.
All right, motion for first reading of bylaw 1979, and is there a public hearing?
We won't advertise the public hearing until after we have the town hall, so we'll come up with that date
Sure,
closer
so
to.
Right now, just first reading.
Correct.
Anyone prepared to make a motion for first reading? Councillor Fox made the motion. Any comments, questions on the proposed bylaw? Councillor Henniger?
Just because we did put out the information and a few people, residents messaged me, I do see that there's obviously country residential built into this bylaw, and there was quite a few questions on what does that look like specifically for airport properties, because there's larger animals out there, horses, for example. I'm just wondering, in part of our open house, could we include what that looks like in those areas? I think it would be a good educational piece, because we don't realize that you can have certain or different, you can have a bison, and I would not want to live next to that. So I would love to include that as an informational piece if we can in that consideration.
You bet. We can definitely do that. It should be noted that was all part of the animal units that were part of the land use bylaw before. So that is a piece that's just pretty much been picked up and put right into this one. No real changes have happened to that piece of it. I also want to be very clear that this does not take away or supersede the dog control bylaw, that remains a standalone bylaw, and the dog bylaw will remain as is and its own.
What's wrong with pet bison? I seen one in the parade.
I think that means Brent's going to get one at his house to add to the funny farm. It'll be great.
Yeah. I have a question, bylaw 1420. Like, how did you find that one? Like, obviously that one was been outdated for many, many years.
Yeah, Kelly, our development officer, she had I don't know, many years ago when she first started with the town, somebody asked about bees and keeping bees. And that's the first one that she could find that had any mention of bees. And at that time, it was a no-go. You could not have bees, and it was specifically stated in there. But yeah, that's a few bylaws ago, for sure.
That's got to be our oldest bylaw on record, no?
Not our oldest one, but one that's referenced. Like, I can't remember actually the year on it, but yeah, it's.
We have older bylaws than this
For sure, yeah.
that were active, usually?
It would not surprise me if they were active, but probably shouldn't be. How's that for an
That's
answer?
what I'm
Sorry.
wondering. Miranda. That's a pretty serious history document, that one.
We are currently working through the bylaws in our online repository to ensure that there are no bylaws that should have been repealed and have not been. So we have started with the oldest and are working up. And so it's been a long process, but we hope to make sure to ensure that there are no bylaws that have not been repealed.
So what's the oldest one you found?
I don't know off the top of my head right now.
Older than this one?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. We should put those in a history book. Honestly, yeah.
Yeah, so through our Laserfiche, through our online repository, they
Okay,
are
they will
all
be.
loaded, every single one from bylaw 1 and up to our current bylaw. And so we're just going through, and eventually our hope is that this will be a public database that people can access.
Nicely done, that's very cool. Any other questions, Councillor Monteith? No comments on chickens?
I have four,
Ooh, 4 comments on chickens.
which I'm sure you were expecting. Questions. The bylaw says that feces have to be hygienically disposed of. I think we need to define that because I have no idea what that means. Some breeds are noisier than others, so are we limiting to certain breeds? Also, we talk about enforcement. However, backyard enforcement is not just driving by somebody's property and looking at it. We have to specifically look at it, and I wonder about that. And I also wonder about the time that the town constable has to be looking after complaints about this when we've got RV complaints, unsightly complaints, dog complaints that seem to keep him pretty busy. So that worries me too. And just on a general basis, we have people that don't seem to worry about unsightly. They don't worry about keeping their trailers on the street longer. So why would they worry about the rules for hens? So those are my concerns.
Thank you for those concerns. Lisa, did you want to comment any of those or just?
I can sure, the hygienically disposed of, absolutely, I can sure come up with a good definition and see what is recommended. Because I would assume that auction markets, vet clinics and that type of thing have to do the same sort of practice, so we can sure find out what that looks like and where that would be disposed of. The certain breeds of chicken, you are probably absolutely correct that there are louder ones than others. It should be noted that we're definitely not allowing roosters, that we are talking hens only, so that should minimize the noise. But I'm not sure of which breeds are better than others. That was never in any of the bylaws, and when I say I read many bylaws from other communities, so that was not something that was mentioned, so that's interesting, and we can definitely look into that a little bit. I have no problem doing a little more research there. The backyard enforcement, I find that Steve, our new bylaw enforcement officer, is pretty good with replying and responding to this be neighborly complaints. And I would say that this is one place where if you had a concern about a neighbor or an adjacent property owner, that you could call in and he could then go and knock on the door and have a conversation with that property owner. I guess it would also depend on for the time of him. It's where it falls on the priority list is council. If this is a new bylaw, we would definitely probably up that enforcement a little bit as people are getting into it and making sure that it's compliant across the board. And then hopefully we get the compliance that we want, because we're introducing something that the residents want and that they're willing to work within the constraints of the bylaw.
Okay, and we'll definitely have opportunity for more comments, questions. The open house obviously will be there. Then a public hearing after that. And even before that, council can definitely email administration with any questions, concerns that they have. Any further discussion, debate on bylaw 1979 first reading? Seeing none, we'll call to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to Mayors and Reeves, terms of reference. So I could speak to this quickly. I thought it would be of interest to council to see the terms of reference for Mayors and Reeves. It meets once a month, and I think it's the first time in a while that they've done some work on their terms of reference just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So I included here more or less as information. Hopefully you've been able to read it. Largely they want to make sure that we're on track as a group. I think there's a little bit more energy in the group than there has been for a few years, so it's kind of nice to see. Before it seemed to be more of an information gathering than it has been too much of a proactive group perhaps. So looking forward to working with them on this some more. If there's any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I would accept a motion to approve the terms of references as presented. Councillor Monteith.
Just wondering, Granham's listed, and I wouldn't have thought they would have been involved.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably something that needs to come off. It would be included under the MD Willow Creek. Any other comments, questions? Motion to accept as presented. Councillor Poitras makes a motion. I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And to the best of my knowledge, that concludes the public portion. I will request a motion to go in camera for one personnel item. Councillor Fox makes a motion. Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Have a great evening.